Punjabi Hari. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivraj Sakatari Astotari Sati Shishi Mata's Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Hare Krishna, devotees. This morning, before we read from Srimad Bhagavatam, we have a section from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. As far as I can see, yesterday we stopped just at the beginning of a discussion between Srila Prabhupada and a reporter, and the chapter titled Swami Invites the Hippies. So I'll just start from the beginning of that conversation so we can get a bit more of it. Reporter, downstairs, you said you were inviting everyone to Krishna consciousness. Does that include the Haight-Ashbury bohemians and beatniks? Prabhupada, yes, everyone, including you or anybody else, be he or she, what is called an acid head or a hippie or something else. But once he is accepted for training, he becomes something else from what he had been before. Prabhupada, what does one have to do to become a member of your movement? Sorry, reporter, what does one have to do to become a member of your movement? Prabhupada, there are 4 prerequisites. I do not allow my students to get girlfriends. I prohibit all kinds of intoxicants, including coffee, tea, and cigarettes. I prohibit meat eating, and I prohibit my students from taking part in gambling. Reporter, do these shall not commandments extend to the use of LSD, marijuana, and other narcotics? Prabhupada, I consider LSD to be an intoxicant. I do not allow any one of my students to use that or any intoxicant. I train my students to rise early in the morning, to take a bath early in the day, and to attend prayer meetings 3 times a day. Our sect is one of austerity. It is the science of God. Although Prabhupada had found that reporters generally did not report his philosophy, he took the opportunity to preach Krishna consciousness. Even if the reporters didn't want to delve into the philosophy, his followers did. The big mistake of modern civilization, Srila Prabhupada continued, is to encroach upon others' property as though it were one's own. This creates an unnatural disturbance. God is the ultimate proprietor of everything in the universe. When people know that God is the ultimate proprietor, the best friend of all living entities, and the object of all offerings and sacrifices, then there will be peace. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay. Now reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, the 4th canto, chapter 28. Paranjana becomes a woman in the next life. Text 59. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Tasming Stvang Ramaya Sprishto Ramamano Shuta Smriti Tat Sangad Idrisham Prapto Dasham Prapi Yasin Prabhu. If there's anybody who has this on their screen and would like to share it with everybody, then perhaps you all could chant the verse also. If not, that's okay. Anybody else like to chant? Okay, I'll chant it twice more. Tasmim svam ramaya sprishto ramamano shruta smriti tatsangad idrishin prapto dasham prapiyasim prabhu. Tasmim svam ramaya sprishto ramamano shruta smriti tatsangad idrishim prapto dasham prapiyasim prabhu. Tasmim, in that situation, tvam, you, Ramaya, with the woman, sprishtaha, being in contact, Ramamanaha, enjoying, Ashrita smritihi, without remembrance of spiritual existence, Tat, with her, Sangat, by association, Idrishim, like this, Praptaha, you have attained, Dasham, a state, Prapiyasim, full of simple activities, Prabhu, my dear friend. Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. My dear friend, when you enter such a body, along with the woman of material desires, you become overly absorbed in sense enjoyment. Because of this, you've forgotten your spiritual life. Due to your material conceptions, you are placed in various miserable conditions. Purport. When a person becomes materially engrossed, he has no capacity to hear about spiritual existence. Forgetfulness of spiritual existence.
उधर आ जाओ रूम में, बाहर आ जाओ, सोफे पे बैठ जाओ, जाओ कंबल ले जाओ, अपना सोफे में अपना बैठ के कंबल से कवर कर लो खुद को। वेरी गुड, गुड गर्ल, मेरी बेटी बहुत प्यारी है। हाय हाय हाय।
Somebody is speaking. I think we need to. I can hear somebody. I think need to.
Sorry.
No problem. Hare Krishna. Okay, I'll just begin the purport. When a person becomes materially engrossed, he has no capacity to hear about spiritual existence. Forgetfulness of spiritual existence entangles a man more and more in material existence. Such is the result of sinful life. Various bodies are developed with the material ingredients because of different types of simple activities. King Paranjana assumed the body of a woman, Vaidabi, as a result of his sinful activities. Bhagavad Gita clearly says, Striyo Vaishyas Tata Shudraha, that such a body is low-born. If one takes shelter of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, however, he can be elevated to the highest perfection, even though he be low-born. One acquires lower births when one's spiritual intelligence is reduced. Translation again. My dear friend, when you enter such a body along with a woman of material desires, you become overly absorbed in sense enjoyment. Because of this, you've forgotten your spiritual life. Due to your material conceptions, you are placed in various miserable conditions. Amagyana Tamrandasya Gananjana Shalakaya Chakshon Militamyana Tasmrishi Gurave Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasari Gaura Bhaktivinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. We've been hearing the allegorical history of King Paranjana as told by Narada Rishi to the sage, to the king Prachini Bahishat. We've heard how he travels unsatisfied, but seeking happiness. And on his travels, he couples up with an attractive lady who promises to fulfill all his material desires. And then together they enter a great city of 9 gates and with and many gardens and stores and an assembly house with a treasury. And together they enjoy sense gratification. This king named Paranjana, he follows his wife in everything she does. His consciousness becomes absorbed in sense gratification. One time he leaves her and goes out to the forest to hunt, and he leaves a trail of destruction, mercilessly slaughtering animals. When he returns to her within his city, he feels regretful and she accepts him back. And again, they become absorbed in sense gratification. They produce offspring, but throughout his life, he's being constantly besieged by the 360 soldiers of Kandavega time. Until finally, his fortress, his city, is weakened so much that it is finally conquered by the king of the Yavanas and Kalakanya, the daughter of time and validity. And at that time, when the citizens of the city are fleeing the city being completely destroyed, he's thinking, because of his material absorption, he's thinking about the future of his family, particularly his wife, and what she'll do without him. And with his consciousness thus absorbed, he leaves the body. He must suffer the tortures due to his previous sinful activities. And then he is given the body of a woman and becomes Vaidavi, a princess, actually. And she's given in marriage, a dharmic marriage, to a great, high-minded soul, king of Malaya Dvaja. And they live a spiritual life. They produce offspring. And then Maladvaja, he goes to the forest, and she, as a devoted wife, assists him practicing austerities. As they both become gradually detached, and he, reaching perfection in his life, he leaves, and she is alone. At that time, she's visited by a Brahmin who presents himself as the old friend of King Paranjana. So, as Narada Rishi tells this history to King Prachani, certainly he would see himself, his life, in the story of King Paranjana. And by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and his purports, because he explains in detail how the story, and there's a whole dimension of meaning behind this story that relates to us. And so I wonder how we are all identifying with our hero, Paranjana, and how much this story of his life touches our own hearts. Paranjana literally means the person living within the body. Lord Krishna explains to us in the Bhagavad Gita that we inhabit a body and a mind, the city with its 9 gates, and then all the activities within it. But we're different. We shouldn't look to find ourselves, to understand ourselves within the kingdom. We are the observer within that kingdom. We shouldn't look to find ourselves within the field, because we can observe it. We're different. Hearing this pastime through the Bhagavatam has such great potency. You know, this truth is passed very carefully down to us through this purely spiritual line, through the parampara, from Narada Rishi. It is recorded in Srimad Bhagavatam, and then that understanding is passed through our own chain of disciplic succession. And through Prabhupada's mercy, we can hear it as fresh and as relevant to us as it was once to King Prachanabarhishat. We can also appreciate that Narada Rishi is very expert, of course. But let us try to appreciate how compassionate he is in his presentation of this truth, that actually we're not this body. And the conception that we have of our lives is really, really just such a small human story. But we, the spirit soul, we're part and parcel of Krishna, and we exist beyond this body. In fact, beyond material existence. Our relationship with the body, even with the mind, and within everything, within material existence, is actually, it is not of real essence. The real essence is of what is most important to us is our relationship with the supreme absolute truth, with Krishna. That is eternal. That is the real thing. But that truth can be hard to hear. It's when we're doing outreach, it's hard to hear for some people, especially some people who are quite well established materially. They've already built a life, a kingdom. And if you could tell them this is all useless, what you've been doing in your life. You're not the king. This is not your kingdom. They can become, they will push back at that. They'll resist that. They'll respond. They can respond quite defensively. So Narada Rishi wants to sort of bypass the fortress, you could say, of King Prachanabarhishat's false ego. He was very exalted soul and performing Vedic ritualistic sacrifices, fruitive activity, but done in a dharmic way, and he was a king. So certainly, he's to be much respected. Narada Rishi, though, is trying to point out that even within the field of his activities, albeit very dharmic, he is not that body and mind. He is not actually King Prachanabarhishat. He's the eternal servant of Krishna. So to do that, he did it in an indirect way, as Jai Shri Prabhu explained yesterday. It was so nice. He did it indirectly through this allegorical history of King Paranjana. And, you know, I know with children, sometimes the best way to point something out to them is to tell a story. So, what to speak of adults? It's like if you tell a story, then the point comes across at a subconscious level. It, yeah, it doesn't come via the conscious, the rational mind where you can argue back. it it can reach the heart where it can cause a shift, a deep shift, uh, which gives rise to a change of perspective and consciousness. So this is what we have here in the Bhagavatam. It's like if you go to a doctor or a nurse for treatment, and let's say you go to a nurse and she needs to give you an injection, or he needs to give you an injection. No, an expert medical practitioner will do that. They'll have good bedside manner. They'll do that in such a way that you're made to feel as comfortable as possible. Like, for example, the nurse won't. She'll usually turn her back to you, and to load the syringe. That's what you call it, the syringe, yeah, to load the syringe. And usually she'll sit down, she'll make you feel comfortable. There'll be a bit of small chat, small talk. And then just as she's talking to you, she's getting slowly ready to, give you the injection. And she'll, just right at that time, she'll ask you something and you'll respond and you know that you know what she's doing, you know what's going on in the background, but you'll respond to her. And meanwhile, you're getting, you're getting this injection and it doesn't hurt. But if she was to load the syringe right in front of you and hold it up and then just jab it in, I mean, even if she was just to load it right in front of you, probably you'd be like, oh, you might even leave. But if she jabs it into you, you're going to feel it, you're going to resist, you're going to tense up, your muscles might spasm, and you might even run. You're not going to take the medicine. So this is this is a really nice way that Narada Muni is giving King Chinibarhishat the medicine. Yeah. Actually, and giving us the medicine, because we all have our own small human story. Like for my 50th birthday, my sister kindly made me a whole book of photos of my life from babyhood and childhood and then my youth and right up to now. And I opened the book and I could see this is my small human story. This is me as the body, as the mind. The word ahankara, false ego, it literally means I am making. So we are the authors of our small human story. We must understand that we are the authors. We're not the lead character. That is not us. That is a story that we've created, a conception that we have of ourselves in this lifetime. And this often, when we identify with our small human story, then, thinking ourselves the lead character, then we can actually suffer incredibly, because it is very small and painful to identify oneself with the material body and the mind. There is a really nice story about there's a master, and he had one, say, apprentice or disciple. And this disciple was very, like melancholic person. And so he would complain. Little things would irritate him immensely, and he would complain about them. And so his teacher, his guru, took a tablespoon of salt and placed it in a cup, and he gave it to his disciple and said, "Here, drink this." And the disciple drank as instructed, and that's disgusting. And then his master said, "Okay." And again, he took a tablespoon of salt and he gave it to his disciple, and he said, "Come, we're going to go to the lake." And he got his disciple to pour that salt into the lake. And then he said, "Now drink." So the disciple took water and sipped. "How does it taste?" "It tastes fine." His master said to him, "The salt, it is the same. The pain that one is going to experience in one's life is the same. But our experience of it depends upon the container that we put it in." And so we have a really small conception of who we are. It's limited, it's constrained by the body and the mind. But if we enlarge our conception of who we are, if we come to understand our existence through Krishna consciousness as being greater, as being beyond, transcendental to the body and the mind, then although we will experience this, we will get the same pain. We won't suffer it in the same way. So that can be understood through that story. And that is why, the great souls, although we see that they endure suffering, they're not crippled by it. They taste it. Yes, you think about the suffering that the Pandavas endured, Queen Kunti. So many tribulations, but still, as in the in the prayers of Queen Kunti to the Lord, and Krishna consciousness and Krishna's presence, then all of those tribulations seemed insignificant. In fact, she asked, "Let them come again and again if I can just have you, Krishna." So this is very wonderful, what we're receiving in Krishna consciousness, a complete change of consciousness. Save the time now. Okay, so for those of you who have been identifying with our hero, Paranjana, and this has really been touching the heart, then when we're coming to this section of the Bhagavatam, it is very, very sweet. Because here, our Paranjana, who is the Queen Vaidavi, she's practiced austerities, and along with her husband, she served him faithfully. He's left. She's alone. She's lamenting, and now she's visited by a Brahmin. This is such a beautiful part. I will read. It's as if Narada Muni's story that he's created for King Pratibhahishat's realization is now coming full circle, because here we have a Brahmin who's revealing to Paranjana his condition, the reality of who he is. Okay. One Brahmin, who was an old friend of King Pranjana, came to that place and began to pacify the queen, Devi Pranjana, with sweet words. I'll skip a few bits. I am your eternal friend. You may remember that many times in the past you have consulted me. My dear friend, even though you cannot immediately recognize me, can't you remember that in the past you had a very intimate friend? Unfortunately, you gave up my company and accepted a position as enjoyer of this material world. My dear gentle friend, both you and I are exactly like two swans. We live together in the same hut, which is just like the Manasa Lake. Although we've been living together for many thousands of years, we are still far away from our original home. So this is very sweet. This is the culminated perfection of Paranjana or Vadavi's sojourn in material existence. She has come, she, the soul, has come in contact with the Lord. And he's presenting himself as Paranjana's old friend. In this part of the Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada explains that actually the Super Soul has been accompanying us since time before the creation of this universe. We wonder why, we speak about since time immemorial, since we can't calculate. Well, it's since before even the manifestation of this universe. Because we understand that the universe is manifested at intervals. It manifests from the body of Lord Vishnu, and then it becomes retracted and sustained before the next manifestation of the cosmos. And then the universe is also manifested at different intervals. And then there are also partial annihilations. So anyway, since way back, as they say, the Super Soul, since we left the spiritual world, then the Lord in his Sanksha expansion, the Super Soul, has accompanied us. And as we travel, as Paranjana travels, looking for happiness outside of his relationship with the Lord sits with us. And in two Upanishads, Mundaka Upanishad and Svetashvatara Upanishad, this situation is described like you have a tree, the body of the tree, and within that tree there are two birds, both are birds of the same quality. But one bird, that is the atomic soul, us, is situated within the tree and is there using their independence to enjoy and lord it over the resources of the tree, of the material world. And in the course of that, it will experience mixed happiness and distress, like some sweet fruits and some bitter fruit. The other bird is there at all times, watching, just observing. You see the individual soul, this one bird is actually, their life is by choosing to enjoy then their life is dominated by the three modes of material nature, as long as they're within the material world. Because of that choice to enjoy, independent of the Lord. But the other bird, the super soul, although he be there also, he's transcendental, but hugely transcendental, not minutely like the end of it, like the other bird, but he's the supreme, he's the Paramatma, the great soul, not the Atma, the little soul. And so he's not affected by the three modes of material nature. He's just there to observe, to be with his friend, the individual soul, and to be there when he needs him. At whatever time the individual soul needs to or wants to consult him, he'll be there. He is Sufit. He's the friend of all living entities. So he is there, Prabhupada says on one of the purports, since before creation, and he is there to one day take the living entity back home. And Vadabi, Queen Vadabi, has been approached by Super Soul, who's now explaining everything to her, Paranjana. So what has happened for Vaidabi to be in such a fortunate position? How has she qualified herself to be to see face to face the Super Soul? Although, you know, he's in the form of a Brahmana, she's not qualified to see Krishna quite yet. But still, he's approached her and he is giving her direct instructions. How has she qualified herself? Well, again, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada's purports, we can understand that figuratively, the queen, Vadabi, and her husband, Maladvaja, represent the relationship between the disciple and the spiritual master. So we can see in their lives, she served him faithfully. She made his service her life and soul, to the point that she left the kingdom and practicing austerities to serve him within the forest. This is the secret to spiritual life, is that we serve the instruction, we serve the spiritual master, we make his instructions our life and soul. Prabhupada explains this within this part of the Bhagavatam in such a deep way. He says that if you, all right, you think about the situation between, you know, these two birds, you know, and one is totally absorbed in enjoying the fruits of the tree, but the super soul is there just waiting for that bird to consult him and receive illumination. Well, the point Prabhupada describes that the starting point, which is tantamount to seeing Krishna face to face as a super soul, is that point when we gather the resolve to follow the instructions of the spiritual master. Now, that may have happened right at the beginning of our spiritual life. We decided, yes, I'll make up my vows. I want to live according to Krishna consciousness and I'll make the order of my spiritual master my life and soul. But also that happens every day, because we're within material existence, it's a heavy conditioning to think of the instructions of the spiritual master, to follow them, to prioritize them, to actually organize our life around them, then that is the path of perfection. Vyavasaya buddhi, ekaha kurunandana. This is how one becomes one-pointed in spiritual life, is to fix one's intention upon fulfilling the orders of the spiritual master. And upon that one line of action, then we will come to see Krishna. During our sojourn in material existence, it's described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita that, when the living entity, the pranjana, the one within the body, becomes a little sincere, a little serious about actually understanding, all right, what's up? Who am I? What is this world? Why am I suffering? I should understand. I should think deeply. What is God? Then when we start having these thoughts, then the Lord in the heart, the super soul, then guides us in the direction of a bona fide spiritual master, the Lord's representative, who can then, if accepted with all faith, can then train the disciple, engage the disciple in the process of sadhana bhakti for the purification of their consciousness from the effects of material absorption, until one comes to the point of Vaidabhi, when one can actually see the Lord in the heart and receive direction from him directly. So this is all described in the Chaitanya Charitamrita. The way these three work, us, the living entity, with our desire and our independence, how to use our desire, and the Lord in the heart and the Lord's representative, the bona fide spiritual master. It's a collaborative effort, you could say. Existentially, this is really what's going on. And this is why I find this part of Bhagavatam so exciting and so sweet to hear that the Lord explain and reveal to Vaidabhi, my dear gentle friend, both you and I are exactly like two swans. We live together in the same part, which is just like the Manasa lake. Although we've been living together for many thousands of years, we are still far away from our original home. So beautiful. Time now. This verse in particular, it's the Brahmana or the super soul explaining to Vaidabhi, again, dear friend, he's the Lord in the heart is very gentle and really is a friend, my dear friend. And now he's revealing. It's just like Bhagavad Gita, the Lord explains, Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam tadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamu payanti te. When one's fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness, then he will directly give us instructions and reveal, switch on the light inside the heart so we can see everything as it is, come out of our illusion. So he's saying, he's speaking now to Godabi. When you enter such a body along with the woman of material desires, you become overly absorbed in sense enjoyment. Because of this, you've forgotten your spiritual life. Due to your material conceptions, you are placed in various miserable conditions. We become, where we take on this body, like a city of 9 gates, or a bag of senses, then, you know, and if our intention is to, if we adopt the psychology of enjoyer and controller, and our intention is to enjoy, try to attain that elusive happiness by through sense gratification, we become so absorbed and entangled. You can see in the life of Paranjana, he had material desire. This woman promised to fulfill his material desires. The next thing, they're in a city, and then they have children, so much maintenance. So we become very absorbed, very entangled, and then more absorbed. Our time to cultivate our spiritual consciousness becomes reduced. And ultimately, our conception of life is very determined by matter, bound to material condition. It's determined by the 3 modes of material nature. And although we are spiritual by nature, Mame Vangsho Jiva Loke, Jiva Bhuta Sanatana, we end up struggling in this material world. Mame Vaishas, that Prakriti Stani Karshati, we end up struggling with the 6 senses, material enjoyment, and then ultimately our conception of life, whatever we hold in the mind, you drive material absorption, will determine that we take on another body where we'll continue the struggle lifetime after lifetime in another body. This is all explained in the Bhagavad Gita. And chapter 15. So what is in the mind, actually? When I was studying this, I was thinking about Paranjana and how, seem very innocent, looking after your body, your own sense gratification, more pious than that we do today. Most people do today. Taking care of your children and your spouse. And naturally, when you're leaving the body, you'd think, oh, I should be concerned about them. That's how, Paranjana was. He was concerned about how his wife would be maintained and how his children would be maintained. You think, oh, that's very good. Very, what's wrong with that? But actually, seemingly innocent, he was thinking of his wife at the time of death. And that determined what kind of body he was going to get in his next life, which is going to continue his struggle in material existence. And I was thinking, gosh, what's in the mind? Like day by day, I'm looking after my husband, my child, the house, and all of its activities. Sometimes I think, just get it all done, and then I can do some other service. I can do some, some service at the loft or a temple or I can do some book distribution and that. So I'll get everything done at home, I'll perform all of these duties and then I've got time for devotional service, I think like that. But actually, we can't be like that because we can leave the body at any moment. And even if we could prepare like that, get everything done, finish up all of our material activities and then get ready to leave the body, actually, according to how all of our activities during the life, that's going to determine what we're thinking at the time of death. So we really need to make our day-to-day activities, everything, Krishna conscious. So that we have Krishna in the mind. So for those who have families and responsibilities like King Paranjana did, we're taught by our acharyas, for example, Bhaktivinoda Thakur, to see our family, our home as Krishna's property. And so looking after them, caring for them, our attachment for them involves Krishna and will purify us to eventually come to the point where we will be thinking of Krishna all the time, which would be wonderful. So in order to change our consciousness, we need to change our activities. Referencing now the third chapter of Bhagavad Gita, Karma Yoga, text 9, Yagyata Kamanamyacha Iloko Yam Kama Bandhana Tat Artam Karma Konteya Mukta Sangha Samachara. Krishna explains, whatever you do, your duties, do them intentionally as an offering to Krishna. Do them as an offering to sacrifice to Vishnu, an offering to me. And do it to please me. Do it with that intention. And in that way, you can always be free from bondage, from attachment, from you will have me in your mind, as opposed to something else at the time of death. Then you will be released from the scarcity, from the struggle of material existence, from one lifetime to another, to another, to another, within material existence. It's been wonderful to try to become a little bit absorbed in this story of King Paranjana, by Srila Prabhupada's mercy, giving us so many nice details about how it relates to our journey within material existence. And it's been wonderful to come to this point of meeting the Super Soul, where Paranjana Padabi directly receives his counsel after so many lifetimes and comes out of illusion. Okay, thank you for those of you who have tuned in, who've been here this morning. I'll finish now. You will have busy days ahead of you in service to the Lord. Would anybody like to make any comments? Or
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Yeah, such a wonderful explanation, and your readiness to explain this text very nicely, right from the beginning, outlining the perception of how the material body is enkept and how it works And we can see from the story of King Puranjana how he is in the previous life um, being attached to the woman, means his wife, and in the next life he became Vaidarbhi, and she was devoted to serve her husband, Malayadwaja, who is here is mentioned as the spiritual master. So here the relation between the spiritual master and the devotee is mentioned so nicely. But when then in between Lord come, when Malayadwaja uh, breathed his last, and Vaidarbhi was alone. When she was alone, she was thinking of what to do next. And by that time, Lord came as a Brahman and explaining the importance, how this has happened. And Vaidarbhi was listening to Lord and understanding how this body is formed and how this life goes on, birth after birth. And finally, uh, uh, make her understand that this body has come because of our desire in the previous life. But no matter what are and she became an woman. But we know, as Srila Prabhupada mentioned, the woman is regarded as the lowest in the human form of body, means in the matter of consciousness, as a low born. But still, if a low born person can be elevated, the only qualification is needed to get attached to the spiritual master. Then doesn't matter whether you are in the low born or high born. The most important thing is the attachment. So being attached to his spiritual master is her husband. She is automatically going to get the benefit to reach to the final destination. The same way her husband was achieved. So this is how Srila Prabhupada is giving us. Doesn't matter whether we are in the low born or high born. It's not the matter. Matter how we are spiritually advanced, we are attached to Krishna consciousness, and then the rest of the life will be determined by our activities, by our association. Srila Prabhupada has given such a beautiful platform so that we never being deviated from this mission of life. Only by the association of ISKCON or by the association of Guru, Shastra and Sadhu, we can achieve the same result. Doesn't matter what capacity we are in, means what, whether we are low born, Shudra or Kshatriya, Vaishya, Brahman, it doesn't make any difference to anyone. The most important thing, our attachment to the Lord. And that is how these things are going to happen. And the next life will be determined with our association, not on the basis of birth. Thank you so much explaining this text. So many examples and your clarity of understanding. Thank you once again. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. That was such a wonderful summary. Thank you. Just wonderful. Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment?
Hare Krishna, thank you. Thank you for the class.
Thank you for
It
the
was
class.
very profound. Words, that's amazing. Thank you.
Okay, everybody.
The super soul in the form of Brahmana came to Devi. So can we say the super soul is synonymous to conscience? Sometimes we want to do something, but our mind pricks and shouldn't be doing this. So is this, how is super soul related to conscience?
My understanding is that after sustained practice in Krishna consciousness, under the guidance of a spiritual master, then we can determine whether, then we'll be able to, we're more purified, we will be able to just make a distinguish between whether it's just our mind or whether it's guidance, it's spiritual intelligence being delivered by the super soul. That's my understanding. Definitely we know with animals, their instinct is the super soul. How is it that a baby chicken is born and just knows to peck the ground? I think that's one example given. It's the way, birds fly in formation. So many examples. This knowledge is given by the super soul. It's called instinct. It's what the scientists call it. When we get a hunch, or when we're about to do something and we think, oh, maybe I shouldn't do that. Is that the super soul or is that the mind? I think it takes some purification to be able to distinguish. And so, yeah, I don't think I can give a blanket answer. I think probably Prabhu, you can tell.
Oh, thank you, Mataji. That's fine. Your explanation is pretty good. Thank you. Anybody else got any comments, queries, or reflection to share?
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam Mataji. Thank you for a very beautiful class. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
I especially liked some of the examples you gave about how if our consciousness is deep enough, then it can absorb all the salt in the world. All the problems become, we can deal with problems. Problems remain the same, but we're able to better deal with them when our consciousness is deeper. So thank you very much for that. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. I liked that story too when I heard it. Makes sense. It's kind of an example of using a story itself to understand quite a deep concept, isn't it?
Yes. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else got any reflections to share before we end? Doesn't seem to be, Mataji. So thank you very much for the class. We'll end the session here.
Thank you very much.
कृपा सिन्धुवैव च पतितानां
पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। अनंत कोटि वैष्णव वृंद की जय। माताजी की जय।
शिला प्रभुपाद की जय। गौर प्रेमानंदे हरि
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 बोल।
All glories to the assembled devotees.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.